starting this video a little late. Had to take my cats to the vet. One is having a, I don't know if it's a respiratory thing or a hairball. She can't meow. The other one is kind of having sniffles and sneezes once in a while. And is due for vaccination and rabies. So I got that done. Donated $300 to the vet. And now to work. Just running around. Pretty nice out, about 74 degrees outside. Hazy, but temperature's good. Come on.
New season streaming at BritBox.com/NPR. And from Indeed, designed to be an end-to-end hiring solution for businesses of any size to attract, interview, and hire candidates all from one place. More at Indeed.com/NPR. This is NPR.
From NPR News, this is All Things Considered. I'm Elsa Chang.
And I'm Sasha Pfeiffer. A federal jury in Pittsburgh recommended the death penalty today for the man convicted of killing 11 Jewish worshippers in 2018. That was considered the worst anti-Semitic attack in U.S. history. In addition to those 11 deaths, 6 other people were injured. Oliver Morrison from member station WESA was in court to hear the jury's decision. Hi, Oliver.
Hi.
Was the death penalty recommendation a surprise?
For most people, I don't think so. He was already convicted on 63 different counts, and the jury decided he was guilty of 200 aggravating factors that showed that his crime was just worse than normal. During the last phase of the trial, the jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. During this phase, it did deliberate for almost a day and a half, which made it seem like he was taking it more seriously. But the defense lawyers had a hard time because Bowers showed no remorse. What he told psychiatrists was that he wished he'd actually killed more people.
What defense was offered by his lawyers?
So they gave a few different defenses. One was that he suffered a tragic childhood, and that was seemed to be true, that his mom suffered from mental illness, his father committed suicide when he was at a young age, he killed himself, and then he himself was hospitalized in a psychiatric hospital multiple times. The second part was that he had schizophrenia, that he had a hard time telling right from wrong. He had these delusions, and part of their evidence was that he only became anti-Semitic and developed these beliefs less than a year before the attack. So they thought that this was evidence it was a delusion. And finally, they just tried some general sympathy. They brought his aunt to the stand, but tellingly, his mom never did take the stand to testify in his behalf.
The fact that there was a death penalty recommendation certainly suggests that the jury did not find that defense persuasive. But do we know anything about how the jury responded to the arguments by defense and prosecutors?
Yeah, we do. The jury said that they agreed with every single one of the prosecution's arguments, including that he showed no remorse, that the victims were especially vulnerable. They said they believed with part of the defense's arguments, the parts that showed that he had a tragic childhood. Nearly all the jury members agreed with many of the defense statements about his childhood, but they didn't agree with the diagnosis that he had schizophrenia. Experts disagreed in court on that, and the jury didn't come to that conclusion. The jury's job is to then sort of weigh those two factors, since they believed part of both sides, and see what is more serious. And for the jury, it was just a lot more serious. There was more moral weight to what he did than to the things that he suffered.
And Oliver, I understand the Jewish community there was divided over whether he should be put to death. Do you have a sense of how people are feeling today?
Well, a bunch of the survivors and family members gathered at the Jewish Community Center this afternoon after the verdict, and that's a critical space because this is the same room that they all came to on the night of the shooting to find out whether their loved ones survived or not. It's also the Jewish Community Center, the place they learned later during the trial was a second place that Bowers was planning to attack that he called off at the last minute. And they began with a prayer from the Tree-of-Life Rabbi Zachary Myers.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehachiyanu v'kiyamanu v'higiyanu lazman hazeh. What we've just said is, praised are you, O God, sovereign of the universe, who's kept us alive, sustained us, and enabled us to reach this state.
And I understand tomorrow.
They had a lot of different feelings about what happened, and the relief was one of them. But tomorrow they said they'll get another chance in court.
Sentencing hearing.
The sentencing hearing, and we're hoping that people will be able to hear them then.
Thank you for that. That's Oliver Morrison, member station WESA.
Communities nationwide are trying to protect themselves from the effects of climate change. They're shoring up coastlines, they're making roads higher, and all of that is expensive. Now, 2 new laws aim to help with tens of billions of federal dollars. But as WABE's Emily Jones reports, that money can be very hard to get. Tybee Island sits off Georgia's coast near Savannah. It's home to about 3,000 people and popular as a beach destination. And it has a problem every time it rains.
So all the storm water drains into here. I'll show you this.
Tybee resident Alan Robertson points to the pipe where the island's stormwater is supposed to drain out when it rains. It's buried by sand.
The pipe's under there. You can't see it, but there. So what happens is, when it gets covered with sand and the tide rises, there's nowhere for the stormwater to go.
The water backs up in the system and ends up flooding the roads.
So the city has to clear this every day.
Climate change is making the problem worse. Between rising sea levels and worsening rainfall, the island's entire stormwater system will need to be re-engineered. Tybee's not alone. Communities across the country have problems like this. Flooding, wildfires, heat waves, and droughts are getting more intense as fossil fuel emissions warm the planet. People need to be protected. Infrastructure like roads and stormwater systems need to be fortified. Doing all of that takes a lot of money. The good news? The federal government is making a ton of money available thanks to a pair of landmark new climate and infrastructure laws. The bad news? That money can be really hard to get.
There are so many new opportunities coming down the line that it's hard to keep track.
Michael Dexter is with the Southeast Sustainability Directors Network. His whole job is helping cities with federal grants. And yet,
it's still hard to look across multiple federal agencies, dozens, if not hundreds of different grant programs,
and figure out which one works for your city. Last year's Inflation Reduction Act and the 2021 Infrastructure Law together contain more than $50 billion over the next decade to address climate impacts. But to get the money, communities have to apply. You need data and plans. Sometimes cash-strapped cities need to come up with some funding on their own. Last fall, at a meeting of government staff in coastal Georgia, participants listed the hurdles they have to clear to apply for funding.
Knowledge of the available grant opportunity, of course, staff time, legal review,
getting all the pieces together and the different stakeholders.
approval to submit the grant, and then the last thing, what happens if we actually get the grant? Oh my God, we have to do it.
It's all a lot to handle for understaffed local governments. That means accessing money can be hardest for the places that need it most. Nathaniel Smith, the nonprofit Partnership for Southern Equity, says the whole process disadvantages many of the places most at risk from climate change, often poor communities and communities of color.
All of these things have led to facilitate a competitive advantage of particularly white communities and well-resourced communities.
Lots of organizations are trying to help navigate the funding needs. And the federal government says it's learned from the past and is designing these programs with vulnerable places in mind. Daniel Blackman was until recently the Environmental Protection Agency's regional administrator for the Southeast.
All these great numbers, these great programs means absolutely nothing if communities that need it most can't have access to it.
So federal agencies like the EPA and Department of Transportation are offering help with the application process. And some of the new funding is specifically earmarked for disadvantaged communities. Michael Dexter of the Southeast Sustainability Directors Network says no one knows yet if those efforts will be enough.
I was going to say, that's the $100 million question. No, that's the $1 trillion, multiple $1 trillion question.
And the answer is essential because these landmark climate and infrastructure laws can only protect people from climate impacts if the money actually unclogs storm drains like Tybee Islands and keeps floodwater off the streets.
This is NPR News.
In the last year, musician Post Malone's life went from rock star to girl.
Going on tour was really hard because she did 10 steps the other day, and her mom sent me a video, and I was like, oh, I really, really, really wish that I could have seen that.
The hit singer put on fatherhood and his intensely personal new album. Tomorrow, one morning edition of NPR News.
Start your Thursday with Morning Edition and Marianne Zalesnik on 91.7 WBXU.
Support comes from Wine-Based Brewery, located on Elm Street in historic OTR, reminding you that Wednesdays are Beers for Humans nights. Each month, Wine-Based celebrates 4 local nonprofits brewing positive change. You can grab a pint every Wednesday from 5 to 8 p.m. and support your nonprofit of choice.
Northbound 75 at Paddock, there's a wreck. There's a broken down vehicle southbound 71 at Red Bank. Southbound 75 at 7th Street, a wreck on the right shoulder. And westbound 74 at Brookville, except there's a wreck there.
is considered. From NPR News in Los Angeles.
And I'm Sasha Pfeiffer. Coming up, we remember actor Angus from a hit HBO show.
He died Monday at the age of 25.
It kind of confused him, looked him and say, are you from Victoria? You know, would say, no, I'm from Oakland, but I'm on the show, yeah.
That story after this news.
Live from NPR News in Culver City, California, I'm Dwayne Brown. The gunman who stormed a synagogue in the heart of Pittsburgh's Jewish community, killing 11 worshipers 5 years ago, likely will be sentenced to death. Jurors deliberated over 2 days before handing down their sentencing recommendation of the deadliest anti-Semitic attack ever in the U.S. Prosecutors say Robert Bowers spewed hatred of Jews online and methodically planned the massacre at the Tree of Life synagogue. Here's FBI Special Agent Christopher Giordano.
Today's verdict will never bring back the 11 members of the synagogue who were killed. But to those families who lost loved ones, I hope today allows you to close this terrible chapter and continue moving forward and continue healing.
The 50-year-old truck driver will be officially sentenced tomorrow and could face the death penalty. California's largest wildfire of the year has ballooned to more than 82,000 acres today. That's about the size of Las Vegas. Among the victims are the iconic Joshua trees in the Mojave National Preserve. Member station KCRW, Kaylee Wells has more.
California's Joshua trees are already threatened by solar and real estate development and by the West's mega drought made worse by climate change. They're also really flammable. A 2020 fire here killed 1.3 million Joshua trees, and it was half the size of this one. Cody Hanford with the Mojave Desert Land Trust says the nonprofit will do what it can to help the plants recover. He expects a tough road ahead.
It is challenging to think about putting one foot in front of the other and doing this again tomorrow, but we have no other choice. We have to do that.
This comes after Joshua trees were denied federal endangered species protections in March because they are too resilient and abundant to qualify. For NPR News, I'm Kaylee Wells in Los Angeles.
Stocks finished lower on Wall Street. This is NPR.
Good afternoon. It's 5:33 and 84 degrees in Cincinnati. This is 91.7 WVXU. I'm Bill Reinhardt. Advocates for affordable housing in Cincinnati say they have enough signatures to put a proposed charter amendment on the ballot, but they gathered at City Hall today asking council to expedite the process. Greater Cincinnati Homeless Coalition Executive Director Josh Spring says a technicality in state law could delay the effort by a year if council doesn't place the amendment proposal on the ballot itself.
Our collective group here, Cincinnati Action for Housing Now, has to turn in 5,385 signatures to put affordable housing on this November's ballot. We have collected nearly 12,000 signatures.
The proposal would raise Cincinnati's earnings tax 0.3% to bring in $50 million a year to fund housing for low and moderate income households. Indiana physicians are sounding the alarm on the impact they say the state's impending abortion ban will have not just on the pregnant, but the entire community. The law is currently on hold, but would ban more than 90% of the abortions traditionally performed in the state. Dr. Katie McHugh says the most obvious effect is on maternal and infant mortality, two areas where Indiana is already among the worst in the country. But McHugh says the impact is far broader.
When people who are pregnant cannot function, cannot work, they are busy taking care of families that they did not have the control to expand when they were ready, the entire family structure suffers, and all members of the community are impacted.
The abortion ban will likely also affect the future of medicine in the state, according to Dr. Rick Henderson, who says the ban has made her and other new doctors hesitant to stay in the state.
It's a direct result of the state legislation introducing fear into our medical practices.
A quarter of Indiana's counties are maternity care deserts, meaning they have no hospitals or birthing care centers. You can read more about these and other stories anytime at WVXU.org. Partly cloudy tonight, 65 for the overnight low. Partly to mostly cloudy on Thursday with some isolated showers and storms possible tomorrow. Look for a high of 81. It's 84 degrees now.
Support for NPR comes from this station. And from your part-time controller, specializing in nonprofit accounting. Your part-time controller helps nonprofit organizations, including foundations, with their accounting needs. More at yourparttimecontroller.com. And from Procter & Gamble, maker of Metamucil, a fiber supplement containing psyllium, a plant-based fiber for trapping and removing waste in the digestive system, designed to be taken every day. More at metamucil.com.
From NPR News, this is All Things Considered. I'm Elsa Chang in Culver City, California. And I'm Sasha Pfeiffer in Washington. For generations, the U.S. government has been seen as a very trustworthy borrower, but that reputation got a black eye this week. The Fitch bond rating agency stripped the government of its AAA credit rating, and that caused major tremors in the stock market today, although officials say the overall fallout should be limited. NPR's Scott Horsley is here to talk through the implications. Hi, Scott.
Hi, Sasha.
At a minimum, this is a symbolic blow for the government's finances. Explain to us why Fitch took this action.
Yeah, Fitch was motivated by a combination of big government deficits and political gridlock. The rating agency notes that the government's now carrying about $32 trillion in debt relative to the size of the U.S. economy. That's almost 3 times what the average AAA-rated country owes. But what's more, there's not much sign of any improvement on the horizon. Richard Francis, who helped conduct this analysis for Fitch, points to the recent deal the Biden administration struck with House Republicans to temporarily raise the debt ceiling. That deal did impose some modest limits on spending, but it didn't really address the country's big, longer-term fiscal challenges.
To really tackle the issue, you're going to have to look at some of the other big elephants in the room, whether it's raising taxes or somehow reforming entitlement programs. There's a number of ways you can do it. Is that there's willingness on either side of the table to make those painful choices.
Francis points to what he calls a steady deterioration in governance over the last couple of decades. Not only the two political parties increasingly polarized on fiscal issues, but we also had the January 6th attack on the Capitol, and now we have a former president who's been indicted on charges he tried to block the peaceful transfer of power. Not really what you'd expect from a AAA-rated government.
How much damage could this downgrade do?
Well, the practical fallout may be limited. Even with this downgrade, the nation still has the second highest credit rating, AA+. So it's not as though institutional investors are going to be forced to sell off their government bonds. There was, as you mentioned, a little gyration in the stock market today. The Dow dropped almost 350 points. But Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen does not think Fitch's move is going to scare investors away from buying government bonds.
At the end of the day, Fitch's decision does not change what all of us already know. The Treasury securities remain the world's preeminent safe and liquid asset, and that the American economy is fundamentally strong.
Yellen called the downgrade puzzling, given the country's very low unemployment rate, falling inflation, and solid GDP growth. One thing to note, this downgrade was not based on some new piece of information or some financial secret that Fitch just uncovered. The political dysfunction the rating agency describes is something we've all been witness to in recent years, so Fitch's move may not change a lot of opinions.
And Scott, what would it take to restore the top bond rating, which until yesterday our government had?
Some effort to address those long-term finances, reduce the deficit, address the challenges of funding Medicare and Social Security for an aging population. Fitch's Richard Francis says there are ways the government could improve its credit rating, but given the way the two parties are dug in, he's not holding his breath.
If we did actually think that there was some meaningful chance that the government could come together and tackle these issues, then we might say, we can wait. But I just don't see that in the current political environment.
Francis said it would also help if the government overhauled that debt ceiling so we don't have to face another round of brinkmanship in just a couple of years.
NPR Scott Horsley, thank you.
You're welcome.
Angus Cloud was an overnight celebrity, spotted by a casting scout on a street in New York. Cloud became a breakout star in HBO's Euphoria. He played Fezco, the drug dealer with a heart of gold.
Listen, Rue, you a drug addict. I don't take nothing a drug addict says personally, because I don't believe nothing a drug addict says. I love you, I hate you, you the best, go yourself. It's all the same, you know what I'm saying? Y'all just looking for an angle in.
I know, but as your friend, I need you to know that I'm sorry. And I love you.
I love you too, kid.
Cloud was an audience favorite, and the show launched him not only into a new career, but into a new life. But that life was tragically cut short this week. Cloud died on Monday at the age of 25. To help us remember him, we're joined now by Variety reporter Salome Hailu. Welcome.
Hi.
Hi. So let's just start with how Cloud first joined the show Euphoria. It's that kind of origin story that people dream about, I guess. You know, like some regular person gets plucked out of nowhere and becomes super famous, seemingly overnight. Can you just tell us briefly what Cloud's story was, how he ended up on the show?
So, Cloud is from Oakland. He grew up doing a bit of art stuff here and there, but wasn't really pursuing any of that professionally. He was just kind of working